This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I am Old Gingerface, your host for the show. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for all the recent subscribers and binge listeners. I really appreciate that. Just so you know, I'll tell you up front, the Patreon has a new thing to it. So if you really love the show, really want to support it, I do a live twice a month, and that live stream is replayed in podcast form, commercial free, and YouTube on the Patreon. So it's just an extra bonus. But that's only if you really love the show. The show will, of course, remain free to everybody. The point is to get it out to as many people as possible so people can hear and appreciate what the men and women of law enforcement actually have to deal with on a daily basis. I'm very excited about today's guest. Didn't expect that he'd want to return. It's kind of a fun story I'll share with you after I bring him on. He is none other than the Homicide Hunter, the host of American Detective. He's the author of several books, retired lieutenant of detectives in Colorado Springs, Colorado, the great Joe Kenda. Sir.
How are you?
It's you.
It's me, yes. Tis I, said he, yes.
Thank you so much for coming back on. And I wanted to share with the people it was like we were saying beforehand, I get a lot of advice from, people and well-meaning people about, hey, you could really get more downloads and more this and more that from the show if you just made these short videos, which is like this whole thing I don't want to embark on, but I did. And I made a bunch of them. So I went through the back catalog and, there's almost 200 interviews. And then I saw Joe Kenda. I said, don't be an idiot. This guy's, on TV, make a short with him in it. And I did it. And that was the two that popped off. Like, I think one has 650,000 views and one has 200 or 250,000 and climbing. And so I saw it happening and I've never had a video do that. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then I was like, well, it's not that beneficial for me because it's mostly just people who love Joe Kenda. Nobody's really caring that I made this podcast. But anyways, I was excited. So I said, you know what? Let me write Joe an email and just let him know there's a lot of love out there for you. Like, because I'm, like we were saying before the show, it just, in a climate of like anti-police stuff, like almost exclusively positive comments about you. I mean, people love that show. They love American Detective. And the comments were coming. I was checking my phone. It must be what a celebrity's like when they post something. Every time I check my phone, there's like 130 new comments. Yeah, I check it every half an hour too because I was like addicted to seeing it go up, And they're all love for you, man.
Well, it's very nice. It's shocking. It's interesting. If you'd have walked up to me over years ago when I was standing in the street in a bad neighborhood waiting for the coroner's van to come and collect my victim, and I was watching the sun come up, if you walked up to me and said, Kenda, someday you're going to be a New York Times bestselling author, you're going to be on television all over the world for 14 years, and you're going to have millions of fans, I would have looked at you and accused you of being on weapons-grade narcotics. But here we are.
Yeah.
Which is I'm living proof that even a blind pig finds an acorn once in a while.
It's crazy, isn't it, the way life can go? I mean, it's so cool. And, it's just done a lot for the image of police, too. I mean, getting that love out there.
Well, it's an honest approach to the problem. Criminal investigation is not car chases, gun battles, and girls wearing clothes that came out of a spray can and carrying a gun that's bigger than they are. The reality of criminal investigation is one foot in front of the other. What happened here and how are we going to find out what that is? And who is going to be responsible? We have no idea. You have a shadow in the night who kills, and you need to provide him with a first, middle, last name, and a date of birth. And that is a euphoric moment when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It's true. I mean, you did it on a giant scale, but even just being a copper on my level, I've had some cases with people that were kind of known for not being our biggest fan, but working with them personally, they get to know you and they get to see you advocate for them. And then hopefully you get that, you identify that suspect, and you get resolution. Now all of a sudden they're like your biggest fan. They're at town meetings saying, "Hey, we should get another cop." Like it really is transformative. But the way you got to do it was on a mass scale, which is beautiful.
It turned out well. I never looked at my work as a job. I considered it a mission. You kill one of my taxpayers, I'd take it personally. And I'm going to find you, no matter what it takes or how much effort is involved. Of the 387 homicides I was responsible for, I cleared 356 by arrest and conviction. This leaves 31 unsolved for various reasons. But now we're down to 28 because 3 of those have been resolved by advances in DNA technology. So my rate of solution is 93%. The
That's
natural
great.
rate of solution runs between 50 and 60%. But I never looked at it as work. I looked at it as it's what I do. It's who I am. If someone does something unspeakable to someone, you have 2 choices. You can remain seated or you can stand up. I always stood up, and I'm proud of that.
Absolutely. You should be, for sure. Now, when you were very young, when you were looking at what you're going to do for a career, was it always law enforcement for you, or was there like another path you could have taken?
It wasn't law enforcement to begin with. What it was government work. And I became completely disillusioned by it when I investigated it. I'm a black and white person. I see things clearly as right or wrong. That's black and white. The government is unfortunately 243 shades of gray.
Absolutely.
What's good for us today? Who do we have to kill to improve our position? That sort of behavior I found to be distasteful. So I said, no, that's not going to be for me. I took the Foreign Service exam when I got out of college, and I amazingly passed it. And then they offered me a position, but they said, you'll have to go to the Republic of Chad in Central Africa, and they don't like us there very much. And so there's 200 Marines at the embassy. You can't take your wife. It's a high-risk assignment. You're going to be there for 2 years.
Yikes.
So you sat back and you say, okay, so I'm not going to be the charge d'affaires at the Paris embassy? No. You're going to Chad without your wife. That's not our problem. It's your problem. No, I'm afraid it's your problem as well. I quit. And that was the end of my government career, which lasted about an hour and a half. Then I decided, what can I do that I can personally do and rise or fall on my own ability? My uncle was a Colorado highway patrolman who I admired greatly. In fact, I named my son after him. My uncle's name was Dan Morrissey, and my son is Daniel Joseph. And I thought, there's something. And then I got to there, and I went to the police academy. I got hired by the Colorado Springs Police Department. And I considered, what is the worst crime? Well, it must be murder, because we'll do the worst to you if you commit it.
Right.
At that time, we'd put you in prison forever, or we would kill you. Colorado has since eliminated the death penalty, but they still have life without. So I thought, well, if that's it, that's what I want to do. And I focused my career in such a manner as to guarantee at least a review of my ability to see if I would fit into the homicide unit. And some of I was one of the few guys on the police department who was a college graduate. So the old heads on the PD, most of them Korean War veteran guys, those kind of guys, high school diploma, they called me college boy, and they harassed me constantly. So you think you're smarter than us. And of course, I loved it. So I said, well, actually, I am smarter than you. That's the whole point. And I made enemies out of everybody, and I didn't care. So I had an opportunity. They put me in investigations as a burglary detective, which I considered to be trivial pursuit. When people's property is stolen, it's replaced by an insurance company. Not exactly exciting. But I thought maybe this is a foothold, so we'll see. They have a double shooting in a convenience store. A stranger kills strangers, always ugly. And they called all hands on deck for neighborhood canvas in a commercial area, lots of apartment windows and so on. So I show up at that scene. And the old homicide guys that are there are complaining to their sergeant about how difficult this is going to be. And boy, I don't know if we can go anywhere. And I walked up to that sergeant and I decided to lay it on the line. I said, I'll take it. And so one of the guys said, yeah, give it to the college boy. He'll solve it before recess. And everybody laughed. The sergeant looked at me and he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll check with your sergeant. If he thinks it's okay, we'll give you a shot. 5 days later, I arrested that guy.
Nice.
And one of those old guys, God bless him, tapped me on the shoulder and said, not bad for a college boy. And
High praise.
And I never left.
That's awesome. Yeah, you took a chance, put it out there, because if you hadn't solved it or if it hadn't worked out, then you would have been like,
I'd still be looking for your television set. It's okay, fine. But it did work out, and I found something I was good at, and I found something that I could work and come to a conclusion, and I never stopped. I'm not smarter than anybody else. I'm just more determined. I worked one case for 9 years before I turned it. And I tagged 2 guys for first-degree murder, and they're going to die in prison. They killed a guy that nobody cared about, nobody but me. But I did, and I finally got it. First case ever prosecuted in Colorado on DNA evidence in 1991. That was brand new technology at the time. Now it's processed to the point where it's incredible what they can do. But then it was a new thing. And no one was really sure what it would do. But I told the management, I said, it's what we must do. It shows so much promise. How could we not do this? Because it was outrageously expensive at the time. And police departments are always hurting for money.
oh, yeah.
So they weren't anxious to get involved in something where each test was thousands of dollars with maybe no result. And I argued, I said, well, I watched the news tonight. I'll be on there talking about you being too cheap to concern yourself with somebody's daughter that's been murdered and see how that goes over, fellas. So I was like, all right. So we did that, and it turned the case.
Yeah, it is a major corner to turn. We now, like on the MDTs we have, if you're just running plates and you get a warrant, there'll be a little message DNA required by the state. So now it's just like it's right in the system. If you arrest somebody in a warrant, the state wants you to collect DNA. They just take it all.
They do. It establishes a file of rule breakers. Somebody asked me one time, how do you deal with all these people? I said, it's not all these people. 98% of the world is just fine. They work, they go home, they kiss their wife, they pet the dog, they talk to the kids, they have dinner, watch a little TV, and go to bed, and the next day they do it again. 2% of the people don't do that because they're special, and the rules don't apply to them. Put a sign up in front of your driveway that says no parking. 98% of the people won't park there because there's a sign that says not to. 2% will park there because the rules don't apply to them. You spend 100% of your time with the 2%, you can become jaundiced about human nature. I have never lost my interest or my belief in humans, only in some of them.
Yeah.
You often hear people say, you'll hear this all the time. People say, well, there's good in everybody. I disagree with that statement completely. Not everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, I interviewed a friend of mine who was retired homicide detective in LAPD, and he said the same thing. He said, I worked a long career in homicide, and I came to a lot of neighborhoods and talked to a lot of people, and East LA, South LA, mostly good people. He goes, they invite you in. Abuela will give you a bowl of pozole or whatever, and you're talking with good people that they want the cops too, and they just want to live in peace. It's that small percentage that people like you and my buddy Dave are embroiled with that you get the privilege of dealing with all the time that can really sour you. So it's great you never lost your love of humanity.
One of the things I did is I avoided making friends on the police department. Nobody knew if I was married, if I had kids. All they knew was I was the boss. And even when I was a sergeant in homicide, everybody deferred to me. Every head would turn and look at me and say, well, what are we going to do now, Joe? Guys who were captains, deputy chiefs, even the chief of police on occasion, asking me for advice. It's crazy. I said, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to do it right now. And that's what we would do. And you're in a situation like that, you're able to extend yourself into a problem case and get some cooperation from everybody that's potentially involved in it, as witnesses, as relatives, other policemen, whatever, to try to get a resolution. And it's right now. It's not tomorrow, it's now. If you wanted to come into homicide after I became in charge of it, you had to interview with me. And there's some other things we had to do as well. I'm going to give you an hour to write a search warrant with a series of facts on one page of a report. Write an affidavit. I don't care if you write it in crayon, just so I can read it. And tell me how we're going to get in that house based on probable cause you find in that one page. And if you can do that and do it well, then you're a guy I'm interested in. But at the end of all that, I would say to them always the same thing. We're not just the police. We're the murder police. When Cain busted a cap in Abel, do you think God sent a uniform to take that report? No, he sent a detective. That's who we are. Now, don't ever tell me you're tired. Don't ever tell me you're hungry. Don't ever tell me you have to go home and see your wife. If I thought you needed a wife, I would issue you one. You're here to do this. Now, if you don't like that, tell me now, and we'll part friends. Go ride a motorcycle. Go be a narcotics agent. Go back to patrol. Whatever you're happy with, please go and do it. But if you come here, I'm going to work you like a dog. But I'll be right there with you.
Yep. Difference between a boss and a leader.
The guys that tell you the truth, I don't think it's for me. Fine. Thank you for coming in. I wish you luck in your career. Or a guy would come in and say, yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, you're on, my man. I hired a kid in patrol, out of patrol, because I thought he was really smart. Had good instincts, good gut instincts about the street, kept himself informed about who the 2% were, what gangs were active in his area of patrol concern, and so on and so on. So I encouraged him to apply. So I want to give him a shot. He did, and he was all for it. He comes to work the first day. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. He looks like a banker. He's wearing a 3-piece suit. I said, Derek, you look terrific. He said, thank you, sir. I said, come into my office. I want you in my office because I have a window. You have a cubicle. But come on and sit out because I want to show you something. So he comes in, and I said, you see that column of smoke rising down there in the south part of the city? Black smoke means a petroleum-based product. It's a house fire. Wood burns white. So that house fire down there is not a fire. It's a concealment fire. Fire department has found a woman in there shot twice in the face with a large caliber handgun. And it's your case. And he looked at me. He said, well, this is my first day. I said, you're right, Derek. You go from being a new guy to an old guy around here in about 15 minutes. I think you can swim. I'm going to throw you in the deep end of the pool and find out. Now, I'm going to come with you. And I won't say a word unless you're doing something hopelessly illegal. And we're going to go there and we're going to see how this goes. He was so nervous he couldn't put the key in the door lock on his unmarked car, you know. And I said, here, let me give you a hand. And I opened the car for him. We got there, and he did the first thing he did is exactly what I knew he would do. He put his hands in his pockets and he kept his mouth shut. And I liked that. So about 6 days after the event, he has an arrest. I said, you've done a fine job of it. A fine job. And he's one of the best guys I ever had. As he loved it. He did it because he wanted to, not because he was employed to do it. That's the difference.
Yeah, I love that story. That's great. It's great they gave you so much control over the unit, too. You could handpick, interview, do the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I had something going for me. I had success.
Yeah.
And so everybody left me alone. They did. You know, if you go to crime scenes before, we got a new chief of police, a retired two-star from LA, smart guy. He comes there, and he was only there for about a week. And we had a terrible case where 5 people were shot to death, a 6th was wounded in set fire to the buildings like a terrorist raid. 2 sisters are murdered. Terrible deal. I'm working this case 24 hours a day for like 3 days. I'm dictating a warrant for the shooter to my secretary at midnight. And I'm going to get a SWAT team. We're going to go get this rat. And the chief walks in, turns the chair around, and leans on the chair and stares at me. Now, I knew who he was, but I'd never met him. I thought, what is this all about? So finally, I did my deal. I dictated the affidavit to the typist. And I said, okay, that's enough. Put a signature line. I'm going to take it to a judge. And then he speaks, the chief, and he says, why are you going to go see a judge? Because I'm going to get him to sign this warrant for 5 counts of first-degree murder. That's why. What makes you think he'll sign it? He'll sign it. And I'm mad now. So off we go. We get a signature, and we head for this guy's apartment. We already removed all the neighbors. Drywall doesn't stop bullets, and we thought he would probably shoot if we made entry. So I called him on the phone, told him who we were and what we were there for. You're surrounded, there's no escape. And he shot himself on the phone, which is really loud on a phone, as it turns out.
Wow.
But he put his top of his head in the sink, so fine. Goodbye. Save taxpayers a lot of money. I come out of that place, and this guy's running down the sidewalk, the chief. And I think, what's he going to do now? Punch me? Puts his arm around me. And he says, that's the finest piece of police work I've ever seen. And it's like, you got a twin brother that sits in a chair backwards, and it was just down in the office a little while ago. It was so odd, just odd. The next day, I go to my office. My secretary comes in, says the chief secretary just called. He wants you at the staff meeting right now. Now, I'm a sergeant at that time. I've never been at a staff meeting. It's the command staff. I don't go to those things. I don't get invited. So I thought, uh-oh, I guess I'm going to get canned. So I go over there, and he sees me in the door. He says, Kenda, come here and stand next to me. Come here. I stand next to him. He points around the room and said, does everybody know who this is? Well, yeah. And what does he do? Well, he runs Homicide. Exactly. He runs it. Nobody in this room does except him. When I ask you if you understand me, I want you to nod your fucking head. Now, do you understand me? Everybody nods their head. And after that moment, there was crickets at a crime scene. Nobody would show up, no deputy chiefs, no captain standing on the gun or kicking the blood or whatever. Nobody. They were gone. They also impersonated Herbert Loam in the Pink Panther. Remember when somebody would say Inspector Clouseau had one eye would start to blink?
Yeah.
Like he hates him so bad. Clouseau, did you say Clouseau? So that was me. Kenda, did you say Kenda? But they didn't come near me because they were afraid of me. All right, afraid of the fact that the chief loved me. And he'd call me on a car phone every time I had a homicide, and it'd say, Joey, I need this one, Joey. Of course, he needs all of them. We're on it, Chief. Because he knows murder scares people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. They all believe they're the victim. And he knew that. So he was always, but it was always, he never told you who he was. You're supposed to know who he is. It was really interesting. But so as a result of all that, I kind of did what I wanted, and nobody would say anything. Nothing.
I love it.
My wife wanted to go on a trip one time. She called my captain, and a captain, all right, and said, "Can you take call this week?" "Oh, I can't." "Why not?" "Joe won't let me," was his response. I'm a sergeant, for God's sake. But he's oh no, he won't do that. So she made a deal with him, and he did do that, and we went on a trip. She and I.
That's
Yeah, it was
funny.
tragic, you know. Who would have ever thought that? But it's only because I would turn cases, and they knew I knew how, and they'd just leave me alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so in what do you think your because I know cops and I know how cops are. What do you think your reputation was with people outside of homicide? How do you think coworkers felt about you? It was the eye twitching thing?
Pretty much. Yeah, it was pretty much the eye twitching thing. I didn't care about that either.
Yeah.
I'm here to do my job. If you don't like the way I do it, or you don't like me, it's of no interest to me. I didn't care. I didn't have cop parties. I didn't go to cop parties. I didn't go to the Christmas ball. I didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
And it was so driven to me once. I've been married for 56 years to my wife. We met each other in high school. I was 15, she was 16. She took advantage of my youth and inexperience. But anyway, we wound up together forever. And she had never been in police headquarters where my office was. Never been there. So my daughter goes off to the University of Colorado and gets in a snit with a roommate, and they think it's the biggest deal since World War II. And they call her mother. "You have to come up here. You have to settle this problem. There could be violence. There could be violence." Yeah, okay, all right, fine. I'll come up and see what's going on. So you can't call me on the phone because I had ways to protect me from the phone. You just couldn't reach me. So she came down to the police building and walked into the front desk and said, I need to speak to Lieutenant Kenda. And the PSR, the police service representative at the desk says, "Do you have an appointment?" He said, "I don't need one. I'm his wife." Well, that goes through the building like wildfire. Not only is Kenda married, it's in the building. All right. And everybody's peeking around the corners and like, "Is it a girl? What do we think?" And they're all looking at her. By the time I get downstairs, she's like backed in a corner. She said, "Why are these people all staring at me?" I said, "They want to see if you're a girl. Come on, let's go upstairs." But that's how it was.
That's so funny.
And I never used my rank. I just called somebody and said, "This is Kenda." Now, the other thing that rattled everybody's cage was another reason why they hated me. If Internal Affairs was going to arrest a policeman for a felony, I would do it. As the commander of major crimes, I would be the guy to go get you and take you in custody. So if I walked into police substation or area command at 2 o'clock in the morning, because I needed to use a phone, I need a computer, I need a men's room, I'd walk in at 2 a.m. and I don't
Yeah.
know.
That did not
What's
help
the
your
matter,
rep.
guys? Guilty conscience? I just need to use the men's room. Oh, thank God. All right. Okay, fine. So, yeah, that was part of it, too.
That's funny.
Because I hold you to the same standard I hold everybody else.
Yeah, of course.
I had a kid, I was in a locker room one night at midnight in a division, and I'm wearing a suit, and I'm working. And I'm just standing there, and everybody's looking at me like, "What is he doing in here?" And here comes this cop. I said, "Hello, John." "Sir." "Got a gun on you, John?" "Yeah." "Take it out. 2 fingers. Put it on the bench. Be careful. Hear a pin drop." He does. He removes a pistol and puts it on a bench. And I put him on the locker, and I said, "You're under arrest for sexual assault on a child. Put your hands behind your back." And I marched him out. And then I put him in prison. Sex crimes was one of the areas I also controlled. And it was just, it's the way it is.
Yeah,
Do
you
the
got,
right
I mean,
thing. I'll back you to the halls of Congress. Do the wrong thing, I'll send you down the tube like everybody else.
absolutely. Got to police our own.
We must.
Absolutely. I asked my same guy, the homicide guy I told you about, David Scotto in L.A. He did a stint in IA, and I said, and I only knew, I've always worked at smaller agencies, so IA was always just like someone in admin. It wasn't like a thing. And I said, according to the movies I've seen, nobody liked you. And he said, actually, LA takes a lot of pride in their IA, because if you're a good cop and you want the public to know that, you would take pride in taking bad cops away. And I said, okay,
Right.
well, that just makes sense. But the movies don't say that at all.
Of course not. No. Every policeman is an alcoholic who lives in a third floor walk-up apartment with a hot plate because he's been married 9 times, and he's a rat, and he's corrupt, and he's all those things. That's the movies. But remember, it's the movies.
Right.
That's why when I started Homicide Hunter, I told those clowns from the entertainment world, I said, hey, you are risking your life if you try to alter something I say, or you try to show something we never did. You need to keep that in mind. And I want a clause in this contract that I approve of everything in this show or it doesn't go on TV.
Smart.
I got that done. So when people watched it, it's realistic because it is, which is why I have so many cops that are fans, because that's what it is. It's what we just showed you. You talk to people, you learn things, you move through things, you learn the next place to go. Give me a lead that I can follow, and that's where it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's something.
I don't know if you know this, Joe. I too was on Discovery Investigation.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Yeah.
It's not quite as prominent as you are, obviously, but I think because of the podcast, it was a glorified like internet clip show. Basically, a producer reached out, some production company was working for Discovery, and said they were basically just looking for cops who could have a title on the screen and say and comment on internet clips. The show was called Exposed Naked Crimes. That's how highbrow it was. But I looked at it.
Particularly the use of the word naked, it tells you it's high quality.
Right. So I look at it and they say, I said, the only reason for me to do this is to get eyes on the podcast. So you have to put Things Police See under my name. Otherwise it's pointless for me to do the show. And they're like, yep, we'll guarantee that. But anyways, long story short, I didn't really get to show much personality or do any kind of, it wasn't me telling my stories. It was me, the producer, saying, hey, we really would like these points in this comment on this video, and then me doing it like a monkey, basically. So it was, and the show is, if you watch it, it's kind of like that. It's not great. But anyways, they gave me the contract, and I've never seen a showbiz rider thingy to sign, and I read it and was terrified. I'm like, it sounds like they're going to own this, and they can clip, splice, or edit me saying anything, and I cannot. And then there's a paragraph this big about the reactions I can have that are no longer valid, which is like sadness, depression, lawsuits, hurt to my reputation, crying. And so I sent it to my buddy who's in showbiz, and I said, can you look at this thing? Because is this standard? And he looked at it, and he was like, and he knows the podcast and stuff, and he looked at the production, and he said, yeah, that's normal. That's what they always give you. He said, it's not a gotcha show. You're not coming on there so they can splice it together and make you look like a bad cop. This is a legit internet show. Like, it was on TV, but it was, so it was fine. But yeah, the way it's worded, if I was going to go on TV and like give my own, they own it. They own everything.
Of course, they own you too, and your children and grandchildren and ad infinitum. And it includes anything that might be done in that regard that is yet to be invented. They even say that in there.
Yeah.
In case they come up with some other way to run film, they're covered. It's all written by lawyers,
Yep.
And that's the deal. So when I started this thing, they said the same thing to me. I said, wait a minute, stop. You saw the pitch reel where I told you what I thought about things. That's why we're here ready to film a season of my show, right? Yes. Then why do I have 50 pounds of paper in my lap? Well, that's your script. I said, no, I'm not an actor. I'm a policeman. I was at this homicide, and I don't recall you being there.
Valid
And he
point.
looked at me. He said, those are the. I said, hey. He said, you have to do the script. I said, no, I have to die and pay taxes. I don't have to do the script. I can get back in my car and go back to Colorado, and you can drop dead. Understand something. I got over playing dress up when I was 5. You should have too. And I meant to piss him off. And it worked. Of course, he was pissed. And so I'll tell you what you do. You turn that camera on, and I'll tell you about this case for 15 minutes. You don't like what I say? We'll talk about this. And he said, all right, because of course, he's ready not to like it. So they turned the camera on. I talked to 15 minutes, looked at my watch. I stood up. I said, is that what you had in mind? We don't need that, he said, and took the script away, and there's never been one since. I say whatever I want. They take out the profanity, but profanity is the language of the street. And when you're talking to street people, as I did a lot, you have to talk like a street person.
Yeah.
You have to address your audience in terms that they understand. You're talking to a lawyer, talk like a lawyer. You're talking to a violent criminal, talk like one.
Yeah, that's what they understand.
That's right.
Joe, I have a question for you. Did you ever, in all those cases you had arresting murderers, did you ever have a guy or gal that you arrested and you were like, you liked them, or you were like, it was kind of unbelievable that they committed such a heinous crime, and you kind of like, you liked them as a person almost. Could you like them as a person?
No, I would never. That never happened. People never surprise me by what they do. They disappoint me a great deal, but they never surprise me. If you allow your emotions to overcome your judgment, then you produce the death of a human being almost every time. And apologizing for it isn't going to work. We're going to take part of your life, or maybe all of it, away from you. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's no personal anything. I would tell them I'm a professional at this. I don't get angry. I'm not going to raise my voice to you. I'm not even going to threaten you. We're going to discuss this. And if you don't want to discuss it because you want a lawyer, I would recommend you get 2 lawyers, because you're going to need both of them.
Understood. Yeah, I kind of figured that would be your answer. I was curious. Your wife was along for the whole ride since pretty much childhood. So did
Must
you?
have hurt today, I might add. But yeah, she's yeah, of course.
Yeah, not the safest career, especially getting involved with what you were involved in. What was the impact on that for her? And did you share anything? Was it helpful to share things with her, or would you just kind of curtail the gruesome details?
I made a mistake by not telling her the details. For years, I've just kept it to myself. That's not a good idea. I thought I was protecting her, and all I was doing was pushing her away. But when it all stopped, she carried a gun for years at my insistence. She's an excellent shot, by the way. You don't want her shooting at you, she'll kill you. And because of I get threatened 100 times a week. I'll kill your wife, I'll kill your kids, I'll kill your dog, the usual crap. But I had her carry a piece. And it was she got so angry with me. She wanted me to get promoted, because once you make lieutenant, you're field grade, and you don't go in the street. You're a clerk. You're in an office. You have minions that go and
Right.
arrest people. That's not me. I was still kicking in doors when I was a lieutenant, and it made her mad. She talked me into taking the test, and I got promoted. But I just kept doing what I was doing. It didn't change anything for me other than I got a raise. And that was it. So we had a kid go to high school. He's from California. He's a Samoan. he goes to this school. He's only like 16 years old, but he tells all these local kids that he's a badass gangbanger from East LA, and he's going to show them how to work this deal. They tell him they're going to kill him after school. It's just kids. They're just running their mouth. But this kid believes him. So he's not a gangbanger. His brother is. His brother's 24 years old, and he is a definite gang member. He calls his brother and says, these kids are going to kill me after school. So at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, in a high school parking lot, brother shows up with an Ingram Mac 11 with a 32 round 9mm magazine in it. I said, where are these kids?
Oh, boy.
And he points to the car they're in. There's 4 kids in there. He hoses the car. He shoots all of them. One of them dies. The other 2 of them almost die, but there's 1 dead and 3 wounded. Plus, he hits 3 or 4 other cars and a couple of trucks passing by on the street because he can't control this weapon. He's just blasting until it goes dry. And then he runs. So it takes me 4 days to find out who he is. And I called my wife, as I had done hundreds of times. And I said, I'll be late. We're going to go get this jerk with his machine gun, and I won't be home until late. And she says, okay. So I come bebopping in the door, 1 o'clock in the morning. All the lights are on. Uh-oh, this isn't right. I look around the corner. She's on the sofa. She has a drink in front of her, which is very rare, and she's in tears. And I thought her mother died because her mother hadn't been well. And I said, what's the matter? When she's really pissed at me, she calls me by my last name. And she looked at me and she said, Kenda, I can't wait for you to come home anymore. Yes, ma'am. So the next day was a Friday, and I was home at 5 o'clock, which is never the case, ever. So what are you doing here? I said, I live here. Well, I know, it's only 5 o'clock. I said, well, I don't have to go back to work on Monday. Well, why not? Because I retired today. It's your turn.
Wow. That must have been hard to do.
It was. And it took me 2 years to recover from that, as I still had a lot of venom in me. But I managed to do that. And I drove a school bus.
I love it.
Yeah. I called my bus the Waldorf Hysteria because everybody on it was nuts, including me. And I loved those kids, you know. That was the only job I ever had, Stephen, where people were happy to see me. Nobody was ever happy to see me.
I love that. That's awesome, man. But I just worked with worked a road job with neighboring town's chief. He's coming up on 30 years, and we were talking. I said, "What are you going to do?" He's like, "Drive a school bus."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great, you know. And then some guy writes me a letter and tells me he's going to put me on television, which I thought was ridiculous, and I threw it away. And then he writes a second letter, and I threw that one away. Then he writes a third letter, and I laughed when I looked at it. And my wife's sitting there, and it's, what are you laughing about? Well, this guy's got a sense of humor. What do you mean? Well, he said, his opening line in the third letter was, I know you're throwing these away. You're right, I am. Well, who is he? Some guy who says he's going to put me on television like that's going to happen. You should call him. I'm calling him. Well, you should know. I don't like TV people. I'm not going to call him. My wife has a PhD in nagging from a good school. Okay. So 4 days of torture. You're going to call him in the morning or the afternoon? What do you think? You think it's a good time? Where is he? California, probably. I have to figure out the time zones, you know, and all this. I never just didn't stop. And she wasn't going to stop, and I knew that. So I know her very well.
Maybe the only person in the world that can handle Joe Kenda.
She's got an Irish temper, and you want to avoid the narrow blue eye. That's bad. When the eyes go narrow, uh-oh. Stand by to stand by. So I thought, all right, peace in the family. I'll call him. And here we are 14 years later. My show's in 180 countries and 50 languages. I have 3 books in the marketplace. A new book comes out, a novel. on September the 10th, and I started another one last week. And I'm filming season 4 of the renamed Homicide Hunter: American Detective to tie it to me. And the season 3 premieres May 29th on the ID channel and on all the other Warner Bros. Discovery platforms, Discovery Plus, and everything else. And the first opening of that show is a 2-hour special on a serial killer out of Laredo, Texas. A really interesting case.
Sound
So, staying busy, as they say.
Yeah, the I think the Bible has a verse that says the value of a good wife is higher than a sack of the most precious gems or something like that. So it sounds like you got a good one.
I do. Her name is Mary Kathleen, a good Irish girl, but we don't say the M word because we both went to Catholic high school. And every time a nun would say Mary, 13 girls would turn around. So
Yeah.
she went by Kathy, because everybody else is named after the Virgin Mary and all that business.
Yep.
And then 9/11 happens. And I said, you realize you got like 4 or 5 aliases that aren't your name? You're Kathleen M. Kenda, M. Kathleen Kenda. You got to fix that. So she does. She fixes it all, gets everything in the correct names and so on and so forth. And it didn't make any difference at all. But whatever. So somebody was mad at me for that. But I said, that's not you. Your birth certificate says you're Mary Kathleen, not Kathleen M. It's
Yeah.
that. It was really pretty funny.
That's awesome. Joe, I've had such a good time chatting with you. Before I let you go, would you mind taking us through the Diane Hood case you had in 1990? I think that one is so fascinating.
It is fascinating. It's a long story, but I'll give you the highlights. We respond to a report of a robbery shooting in a city park recreation center used for the purpose of people with the disease of lupus having a meeting on a Wednesday night. That had been a crime in that neighborhood for 10 years. Very, very quiet. 2 women walk out of there. One of them's got a purse. They both have purses. A male party in military clothing, ski mask, large caliber gun, walks up, says nothing, points a gun at Diane Elaine Hood, and she hands over her purse, and he immediately shoots her. He hits her in the left shoulder and knocks her down. Then he kneels in the blood and gives her a pass-through shot through the chest in her left armpit, and it exits her right armpit and breaks her right arm. That, of course, is fatal. Goes through both lungs and the heart.
Wow.
And then he runs away. So we get there, and I looked this over, and I looked at my guys, and I said, this is not a robbery. I was a sergeant then. This isn't a robbery. This is an execution. Why would he kneel down and shoot her? Why did he not shoot the other one? And one thing led to another, and we determined her husband, Hood's husband, was 6'5" and a workout freak and an athlete and a college quarterback who was actually drafted by the Dallas Cowboys, but didn't make the final cut. And now he sold life insurance. So the witness says, and you have to be careful when you ask people questions. Don't ask somebody how tall somebody was. People have no idea. Ask them this instead. Was he bigger than you or smaller than you? Well, he was smaller than me. Well, how tall are you? Well, I'm 5'8". Well, it's not the husband. He's 6'5". But I don't like this. I just don't like it. I'm a student of human nature. We inform Mr. Hood of the loss of his wife, who is the mother of 4 children they have, and he has no reaction. Now, I've seen a lot of grief reactions that are all different, but this guy acts as if he knew already that his wife was no longer alive. A series of steps which we can't go into because it'll take too long. We identify he has a girlfriend whose name is Jennifer Von Reale. She's also married, has 2 little babies. Her husband's a major in the Army. One thing leads to another. We determined she was wearing her husband's military clothing, and she shot and killed her rival, Diane Elaine Hood. Shot her to death. because the husband had put a $400,000 insurance policy on her, which they thought apparently you could live forever on 400 grand, which you cannot, but they thought so. And we take her to trial twice. Once she pled not guilty by reason of insanity. She lost that. Then we charged her first degree murder, conspiracy to commit same. And she is convicted of that and goes to prison for life. A production company from Australia, who are advocates of women who've been under arrest for doing something at the behest of their boyfriend, husband, whatever, doing a series of shows about that. They select her as another victim of all this.
Great.
And when you've been in prison for 20 years on a life sentence, you can ask for a parole hearing. She had been there for 20 years. This was right after the 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. And she says that she was under the Svengali-like influence of her boyfriend. She didn't mean this. It was all a big misunderstanding. And so I would go to my parole hearings as I get the last word. So I went to the hearing. She was there. And she sees me and just about drops over on her chair. I said, hello, Jennifer. Prison hasn't been kind, I see. She looked terrible. So at the end of the hearing, they're all nodding their heads at the testimony from these Australians about how sad this case is because she's just a nice young woman and, all that nonsense. No longer young, by the way. But anyway, is there anyone else that I have something? Yeah, I do. And who are you? I'm the arresting officer. Oh, well, take the podium. So I do. I said, I just have one question I need the answer to. And I'm not sure who I should address this to. There's 12 members of the parole board. So I'll just ask the question and I will determine who it is that will answer me. We are here today to discuss Jennifer Von Reale's early release from prison. Is that right? Well, of course. Okay. Then who among you can decide to release Diane Elaine Hood from her grave? Would that be you? Or perhaps it's you? Or maybe you, madam. Maybe you're the one who can do that for me. And they just stared at me. I said, no answer. Parole denied.
Excellent.
But then she got out anyway 5 years later because she developed cancer and it killed her. So long, Jennifer, you little bitch. You know what I mean? But anyway, so yeah, that's it's interesting. I don't forgive and I don't forget.
Man, that's crazy. That is crazy that a group would get that much steam to advocate for people that have committed crimes like that.
All they have to do is wave the sympathy flag and everybody jumps on board. People don't like to make decisions. They certainly don't like to make hard decisions. Proof in a modern court is proof beyond any doubt, not beyond a reasonable doubt. Because the jury wants to be able to say to their friends, well, they had so much evidence, what could I do but find them guilty? They want to lay off the decision. They won't stand up for it. Because maybe they won't like me if I put this guy in jail. Human nature is disgusting when it follows by natural means. And the reason I was a good detective is I understand human nature.
Yeah.
I used to always say, tell me a story. I wouldn't say this out loud, but I'd say, tell me a story I'm going to believe. Tell me a story about something someone in your position would actually do and not what you've invented to tell me.
Right. Yeah.
The difference.
Absolutely. Decisiveness is so important. And just coming up through my career and the few different jobs I've worked in, of course, police world, but decisiveness in a leader especially, I noticed that leaders that were like really nice guys, but were like too open to input and would like change course and like correct. And it was almost like, I'd rather you just be decisive about what you want done. And if it's not exactly right, whatever, but stop being so insecure about your decision.
Correct. And that was never me. Somebody. I had one detective who always had an opinion. And, well, I think we should. No, 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 no. There you go, thinking again. That's not your area. All right. I do the thinking. You just do what I tell you. Okay? Are you clear on that point? Now go
That's
do this and do it right fucking now and come back here and tell me what you learned. You know.
yeah, that's great. Joe, the last episode you did on Homicide Hunter, season 9, you did a gruesome murder of a child in his bed, but you kind of always avoided that. Like you kind of never. It seemed like you never wanted to do that. What made you change your mind for the final
Because I
one?
knew it was the end. I'd already told him I was ending it. I had told him that when we finished filming episode 10. I said, I'm done. I don't have anything else that is useful. My other cases are either too simple. We came, we saw, we arrested. A grounder in the murder business, we call it, where you hit a ground ball at a shortstop and you get thrown out at first. There's no story. It's a murder, but there's no real story. Or they're just too gruesome for a general television audience, or they involve children and babies, and I won't do those. That one I wanted to do because I wanted people to understand how the impact of this work can have on you for all of your life. That incident is one of my 5 recurring nightmares. I see that kid every night.
You said last time you'd see a river of blood with people waving as they went by.
Oh, that's one of my other dreams. Yeah, of course. My victims all saying hello in various stages of decomposition. That's wonderful. Yeah, it's very nice.
Brother, that's
But,
rough.
hey, it's the price you pay for the work. It's worth it. It's worth it. I put a lot of people in a cage. Most of them died in that cage, and they deserve to.
Absolutely, it's good work, and somebody has to step up and do it. So, and someone capable like you, it's a huge blessing for wherever you're working. Joe, I got to ask you, what do you do for hobbies and stuff? What do you do? What are your interests outside of police work?
We travel. I like to fly airplanes. I'm a licensed pilot.
Nice.
We go a lot of places, do a lot of things, see a lot of people, friends of ours, whatever. And we like to go around. We've been almost all over the world, and I believe it or not, I get recognized all over the world.
I bet. Yeah. I mean, how often is that for you? Can you go out to the grocery store or?
Well, since I live in this little town in Virginia now, because my son lives here, everybody's kind of accustomed to me being around now. But initially it was pretty embarrassing. But now they're, oh, hi, Joe. Hi. Hello, how are you? It's like any place else. You become one of the locals. But yeah, when you go somewhere, when we travel, it can be cumbersome, as they say.
Yeah.
Kathy and I go someplace, and we're sitting in a eatery in an airport, stuffing a cream Danish up our nose. 12 people will come and sit around us in a circle and stare at us. They're
You're what?
afraid to say something because maybe I'm a jerk, maybe I have a gun, whatever. They just sit there and they stare at you. And then finally, somebody is an emissary. He's got enough nerve. He comes over. Hi, hello. Are you Joe Kenda? I am. How are you? And oh, he's nice. Then here comes everybody. And then you got to say, I got to go. I got to plane.
Your
But
wife
I
loves
sign
it.
pictures for people, and I pet the dog and hold the baby and all that. It's what you should do.
Yeah.
It makes them feel good. It takes 30 seconds, and it's good for business. They'll tell their friends, he was nice to my niece. He was nice to my daughter, to my husband. And so I'm going to watch that show. I've never watched it, but I'm going to watch it because he was nice to me.
It's
And
great.
more people should understand that.
Yeah. Jim
Isn't
Carrey was quoted.
that? Huh?
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
I said, it's you didn't have fans, they wouldn't have you.
Right. Jim Carrey had a great line when he said, I've done something. I've had such a blessing in my life that I've done something that when I meet people, they only show me their best side. And
That's
he said
true.
it can be, it can be overwhelming. It can be annoying, but I can't forget that gift.
No, one of the funniest things anybody ever said to me. A guy ran across the street in Virginia Beach. He's wearing a suit. I mean, he's not an idiot. He almost got hit by a cab because he saw me. And the cabbie locked it up, blew smoke in it, and he just ignored it. They kept running toward me, and he looked at me, eyes as big as silver dollars, and he says, "Do you know who you are?" I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I do. I've got a Virginia driver's license in my pocket with my picture on it, and fortunately, it has my name as well." And he got the straight look in his face. He said, "That was really stupid." I said, "Yes, it was. I'm Joe Kenda. Who are you?" It
That's
was really
awesome.
funny. And we kind of made friends, but it was like, what? I don't know what that is, but people get so excited. They don't know what to say, or they say something silly, or, it's weird.
Yeah, I was once overwhelmed with celebrity. Like they were everywhere. I did a job with a company in LA where I was essentially a bodyguard for LL Cool J, and we went to the MTV movie awards one year, and I was backstage. But the beauty was I'm not allowed to really talk to anybody. So I didn't have to worry about like seeing somebody and them wanting to go introduce myself, because that would be like you're uninvited to this detail.
Yeah, that's right.
But I stood there and watched LL Cool J hug Marky Mark, and the kids from Stranger Things were running around, and anybody you can think of, Jack Black, like all these people are like just walking by having conversations, and I was like, "Play it cool, Steve. Play it cool." You can't.
Yeah, don't say anything. I know. Yeah, it's crazy.
So,
I
Joe,
was at
you
a party once in LA for the network. All right. And as their 30th anniversary of being in business, this is a number of years ago, but we're at the Beverly Hilton in LA. And this girl, who's, I guess, an actress, I don't know, I have no idea who she was. She walks up to me kind of disapprovingly and confrontively and says, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "I'm in charge of parking cars. And if you're not nice to me, a drug dealer's going to be driving your car around in Tijuana and running whores out of the back." And he just looked at me. It was really funny.
that's awesome. You got to have fun with it.
Sure you do.
Joe, you're not a hard guy to find. It's almost pointless, but because you can just Google you and you pop up. But on the screen right now, I have the books here, and the book that's about to come out, and your two shows. Is there any place else that you'd want people to be able to reach you, or where can they go get your books? Is Amazon website?
It's an Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any place that sells books has all the titles. Two are actual cases of mine. The first one is "I Will Find You," which is kind of a semi-biography of my career. The Killer Triggers book is about there's a ball of violence in every human being. It remains at rest for most people for all their lives. But once in a while, an emotion of some type will trigger that ball to begin to move. So I took 12 cases of mine that I worked, and so what is the trigger that made this ball of violence move? And that's that book, Killer Triggers.
That's
All
interesting.
is not, all is not forgiven is based on an actual case with the facts changed quite a bit. But it's a fictional book. And this one coming out in September is also a fictional book, First Do No Harm, because my villain in the book is a doctor.
Excellent. I love it. Good for you. And you're writing another one.
Yep, I just started it last week.
Jeez.
So I've thrown away the first 2 pages already 6 times. So, I don't know. It takes a while.
I bet.
It takes about 6 or 7 attempts before you think, that's pretty good.
Yeah, but then you got to have your wife read it or something, have somebody look at it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And she usually looks at it and says, "This is a piece of crap." "Okay, thank you, dear. I appreciate your support."
I'll go back in my room. Yeah, that's awesome. Joe, it was such an honor to have you on the show again, man. Thank you for wanting to come on and chat with us again.
Hey, no problem. Anytime you like, okay?
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to do the outro. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes. Can you hang on for a second and chat afterwards?
I got to go. I got to be at a charity event here like 5 minutes ago. So fortunately, I got to take off.
Got it. All right. Well, let's keep in touch, and thank you again.
Sure. You got the email, so that's the easiest way to reach me. I don't have an agent. I don't have anybody. I got me.
That's the way I like it.
That way.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, brother.
You bet. See you.
The great Joe Kenda, ladies and gentlemen. What a fun time having him on and really just letting it rip, talking about all different aspects of stuff, not just his biggest cases. So thank you to him for coming on. This is the time in the show when I thank the Patreon sponsors. Let me get that up. Who I'm talking about is J.A. Family, the great Jessica King, Jason Labrie, everybody, Bentley Barnett, Zachary Pleat, the great Sheriff Ronald Long, awesome for Andy, everyone, the great Adam McMahon, Clark LaCoff, Nancy Hammond, Zach Haney, the great Brad Thompson, Kyle Roberts, Elliot Sykes, ladies and gentlemen, the great Dave Ellman, Richard Tolles, keep on trucking, brother, Doug and Kelly Newman, I'll see you at church, love you guys, Dan Carlson from Burley Boards, amazing woodworker, check him out on Instagram, Scott Young, the great Thomas Connell, Dennis Carrasquillo, everybody, none other than George Tessier, see you at church, brother, Iceman from Motor Cop Chronicles, Greg Gadboy, the great Ben Peters, Scott Minkler, Tammy Walsh, holding it down to dispatch, Sean Clifford, the great Sasha McNabb, Jason Lau, ladies and gentlemen, Lauren Stimson, Jake Pinito, John Shoemaker, the great James Rose, Seth Wright, Tony Fahey, everybody, William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long to you, the great and powerful Andy Biggs, everyone, the great Chris June, Adam Mihal, Gary Steiner, everybody, and the handsome Lane Campbell. Whew, it's a mouthful, guys, and I love saying it. Thank you so much for all your support. There is a new tier on the Patreon. If you're interested, it's the Captain's tier, and it's $100 a month. This is for the person, I do, believe it or not, get contacted randomly who people want to give more than the tiers, or they want to give a bigger lump to the show to support, which is amazing. And I just decided, you know what, for those folks out there who really want to help this mission succeed, I made a Captain's tier. It's $100 a month, and you can see it on Patreon. The other ones are $5 and $10, are more affordable. But like I always say, if you can't afford it, it will remain free. The main part of the show, the live stream replays, podcasts, and YouTube will be on Patreon. Also, early releases of the episodes, and also you get one of these snazzy vinyl stickers. I will mail to you 3x3 vinyl sticker for the podcast. So guys, thank you so much, and I will see you next week.